story begins with Dave, fully suited up, crashing into a car. Before becoming a superhero, Dave was a complete nobody who gawked at his English teacher's milk jugs. It also didn't help that he was a total joke to the girls and the subject of ridicule to the boys at school. One random evening, his mother dies of an aneurysm in the kitchen, and 18 months after her death, a crazy thought pops into Dave's mind in a comic book store. He asks his fellow geek friends why no one has ever thought of being a superhero. And even though his friends shut him down immediately, Dave tries to convince them it's a cool idea. But the topic switches to Chris D'Amico, one of the richest guys in school, solely because they think being connected with Chris will give them a social boost. Marty and Todd push Dave to approach him, but before Dave can, Chris's bodyguard blocks him. Later on, the geeks leave the comic store laughing at the incident, but their smile gets wiped off when two vagabonds bully them into submitting their valuables. At night, while Dave decides it's time to order a suit and play superhero, Frank, a wealthy evil Don, and his men are in a warehouse, threatening to cut off a suspected coke thief's finger. Trey, the coke thief, tries to explain that the coke was stolen by a Batman wannabe, but Frank insists that his Russian contacts had seen him stealing and selling the merchandise. Despite Trey's persistence, Frank orders his men to cut off his finger. He casually returns to his car and drives away to watch a movie with his son. Meanwhile, at home, Dave gets his superhero package and flexes it in the mirror. The following day, Damon teaches his daughter, Mindy,
Fine, baby doll.
how to use a bulletproof vest. Afterwards, they round off their training with some bowling and bond over junk food. The following day, Dave suits up after school and tries to train, but he soon learns he's a flimsy wussy. After changing back into normal clothes, Dave walks in on two thugs hijacking a car. The thugs scare him away at first, but mid-retreat, Dave realizes that he has to practice what he preaches, so he suits up and returns to the scene. The thugs burst out laughing at the cringe fool cosplaying a superhero, but Dave refuses to be mocked and curses them out. The thugs throw the first punch, and despite being hit, Dave reveals his hidden weapon and hits one of them, but unfortunately for him, one of the thugs jams a knife into him. As if that's not enough misfortune for one day, after the thugs dip out of the area, a car runs him over. Luckily for Dave, he's able to convince the medics and the police to remove his costume and not mention it to his dad. The following day, Joe, one of Frank's men, visits Frank, who turns out to be Chris's dad, and shoos Chris away when he tries to follow them into the office. Now alone, Joe reveals that Trey was telling the truth about being gaffed by a Batman wannabe, and in response, Frank decides it's time to have a chat with his lying Russian contact. On the other hand, Mindy is thankful that her father finally gifted her a knife, and while she swings it, Damon quizzes her about weapons it uses.
One is...
In Frank's office, halfway into Chris's gun roleplay, Joe rings and asks Chris to give his father the phone. During the call, Joe yaps about a plumber and a microwave, but Frank curses him out and hangs up. So after the call, Joe orders his men to lock another suspect in a boiling room till he confesses, but the poor innocent dude blows up before telling them anything. On that same night, while Dave is fascinated by his x-ray, his father asks him why the police said they found him naked, and with a straight face, Dave guilts him into believing they had to dispose of his clothes because of the blood. Months later, Dave returns to school fully healed.
It managed to fix me up pretty good.
And during lunch break, his friends tease him over the incident. After the break, Katie, Dave's lifelong crush, suddenly invites him to hang out at the comic store after school. And when he tries to share the news, his Sour Patch friends rain on his parade by informing him that the whole school and Katie thinks he's gay. The following day, Dave continues his superhero training in his room, and after a long, cringeworthy pep talk, he patrols the street to look for a lost cat. Dave finally sees the cat, but while he's trying to get it, he trips and unknowingly makes a man fall. A bunch of thugs from nowhere jump the man on the ground, and Dave joins in and tries to beat the thugs, but the thugs do a good number on him. Mid-fight, a kid passes by and calls everyone's attention to the superhero fighting in the street, and while everybody watches, one of the thugs pulls out a knife, but Dave talks him out of using it. The thugs run away when they hear a siren, and the kid runs back to ask the superhero who he is. Still panting, Dave responds that his name is Kick-Ass. The Kick-Ass video goes viral, and Dave becomes a celebrated hero to everyone in the city except Frank, who develops hate at first sight. One night, while Dave is checking his mail, he sees Katie's invite and meets up with her at a diner. During the date, Katie coincidentally reveals that she needs Kick-Ass to help her with her bothersome ex, and mid-confession, she realizes she's finally found a gay friend to share her worries with. All thanks to his friend's wrong encouragement, Dave reluctantly agrees to be her gay bestie. That night, Dave suits up and walks into
Turned out to be more of a lame cobra.
an apartment complex to solve Katie's problems. After being ushered in, Dave walks into a room full of high weirdos, and when he mentions he has come to deliver a massage from Katie, he gets the attention of Rasul, Katie's apparent ex-boyfriend. Dave boldly tells the buff man to move on from Katie, and Rasul immediately asks the scrawny-suited kid who he thinks he is. Dave courageously introduces himself as Kick-Ass, and insists Rasul leave Katie alone, only for Rasul to signal his men to hold him down, before asking Dave what he would do if he doesn't back off from Katie. Dave shoots a taser at Rasul's forehead, and Rasul immediately goes into blind rage mode. He picks up a knife, but before he can use it, another knife is shoved into him from behind. After the buff man falls, Mindy, suited up in hero gear, dares the others to come at her, and when they do, she beats the living shit out of them all, including the innocent dude coming out from the toilet, and the girl trying to run away. The commotion draws the outside dude's attention, but before he does anything, Damon snipes him down. After everything, Mindy curses out Dave and his one-shot wonder taser, before racking up all the thugs' cash and escaping with Dave. When Dave asks Mandy who she is, Mandy introduces herself as Hit Girl and her father, Big Daddy, and Dave returns home that night to rethink his superhero dream. That night, Joe tells Frank that Kick-Ass killed Rasul and the others, and Frank immediately orders them to take out Kick-Ass ASAP. Still on the same night, Mindy and Damon sneak into Dave's room to shit on his confidence, and propose they start working together.
Back to headquarters.
The following morning, little after Frank curses a cop out into doing his bidding, Hit Girl and Big Daddy are seen squeezing one of his men into a tractor in the city. In the afternoon, while Dave is getting a rise off rubbing Katie, Katie tells him she hasn't heard from Rasul in a week. On the other hand, Marcus, a cop, sneaks into Damon's hideout, where he finds a comic book describing how Frank framed him for a 5-year sentence, and how he began grooming Mindy for his revenge. Damon shows up with a gun pointing at him, but when Marcos reminds him he's a cop, Damon uncocks his gun and denies brainwashing Mindy. The two old pals exchange greetings, and Marcos asks Damon if he's involved with Kiss-Ass. When Damon says no, Marcos tells him to back off before Frank pounces on him and Mindy, but Damon refuses to let go of his revenge. On the other hand, Frank sees Kick-Ass on the street and orders his men to follow him into an alley. Frank gets out of the car, stops Kick-Ass, beats him up, and shoots both an innocent passerby and Kick-Ass himself. However, Dave is seen at school comforting Katie over Rasul's death. Back at the office, Frank is crashing out after finding out that he shot an impersonator, and Chris, who was eavesdropping, barges into the room to reveal that he has a plan to catch the real Kick-Ass. After hearing the plan, Frank reluctantly agrees to sacrifice one of his men for the stupid plan. Meanwhile, at a diner, Dave tells his friend that Katie is feeling him, and shortly after they tell him to reveal he's not gay, Katie walks in to gush about the new superhero who caught one of Frank's men. On the news, Red Mist, a new city hero who's actually just Chris, talks about how Kiss-Ass inspired him into heroism. Dave, on the other hand, gets salty with Katie, and his friends hyping Red Mist up. When Katie and his friends mock Kick-Ass's costume for being inferior to Red Mist's,
No, it's not really my type.
Dave returns home angry and ready to switch things up. But before he can, he gets a message from Red Mist. Later that night, Red Mist meets up with Kick-Ass, convinces him to take him as a sidekick, and shows off his soup ride. While the two teenagers cruise the soup car, Red Mist, aka Chris, casually cooks up a story about a girl, gets Dave to agree to swing by her place, and signals his dad. In turn, Frank alerts his men that Kick-Ass has taken the bait. Chris drives them to the ambush location, but when he sees it's on fire, he runs in to save the men trapped inside. Dave follows his new friend, only to find out that all the men inside have been shot. Realizing this, Dave tries to get Chris out of the building, but Chris stays to grab a teddy first. And outside, Frank sees that his plan is ruined, and quietly drives away. The fire increases, but the teen heroes manage to burst out of the burning building, catching their breath outside. Dave asks Chris about the teddy, and Chris pretends to throw it away. In the office, Frank blames Kick-Ass for burning down his warehouse and killing his men. But Chris, still disguised as Red Mist, barges in mid-rant to tell him that it's not Kick-Ass they need to worry about. He pulls out the teddy he saved from the fire and plugs it into the office TV. And on the TV, Frank and the others watch how Big Daddy, aka Damon, takes out all his men and sets the place ablaze. After the shit show, Frank asks Chris who Big Daddy is. And when Chris admits he doesn't know, Frank orders an immediate lockdown until Big Daddy is found and screwed over till he's unrecognizable. Meanwhile, in the hideout, Marcus rings to tell Damon that Frank is on to Big Daddy, and in response, Damon immediately tells Mandy it's time to pull out the big guns. On the other hand, Dave is feeling overwhelmed by his secret life. After some consideration, he decides it's time to let go of the suit after completing one last mission, the mission being to sneak into Katie's room. Unfortunately for him, Katie greets him with hairspray in his eyes and beats him up until he pulls out his mask to show her that he's Kick-Ass. Dave confesses that not only is he Kick-Ass, he's also not gay. Katie loses her mind for a bit, and when she finally calms down from her crash out, she refuses to talk to him and shows him the way out. But before he leaves, she changes her mind and invites him to stay. The following morning, while Mindy and Damon are plotting against Frank, Katie and Dave tell the others that they're dating. A week after promising Katie no more Kick-Ass business, Dave receives a text from Red Mist and immediately calls Katie to inform her he needs to be Kick-Ass for one more night. Dave meets up with Chris in the soup's car, and Chris pretends to be afraid that the people who burned the warehouse might also come for them. He asks Dave if he can convince the other heroes to help them, but the other heroes in question are in the hideout, smiling over their grand plan to mess Frank up. Chris eventually tricks Dave into taking him to the heroes' hideout, while Frank's men follow discreetly. They arrive at Big Daddy's hideout, and Dave escorts Chris into a room where they meet up with Damon and Mindy. Immediately, Mindy extends a greeting hand. Chris shoots her, and before Damon can react, Frank's men burst in from nowhere to grab them all. In the office, Chris scolds his dad for rounding up Kick-Ass with Big Daddy, but Frank tells his son to get over it. And after he gets over it, Chris joins his father to watch him unveil his master plan. On the news, the reporter reports that Kick-Ass is having a mask review on air, and Katie immediately tries to call Dave to ask him why he didn't inform her beforehand. The countdown runs down, and instead of a fancy reveal, Frank's men show Big Daddy and Kick-Ass tied to a chair. They begin to beat them to a pulp, and the news instantly shuts it down due to the violence. But the viewers switch to the internet. While receiving the greatest beating of his life, Dave regrets his decision to play superhero. The men rouse them in petrol, but just before they burn them, one of them suddenly drops dead. The lights go off, and through night goggles, Mindy guns a good bunch of them down. But before she gets to her dad and Kick-Ass, Frank's men set them on fire and rain bullets at her. Whilst hiding, Damon asks her to switch to kryptonite, and like the expert she is, Mindy switches up, takes out all of them without getting hit, and puts out the fire. After shooting the fire, Mindy tries to free her father, but when she realizes it's too late for him, they exchange goodbyes. On the drive back in Red Mist's car, Dave learns that Mindy is now an orphan with a $3 million trust fund. He thanks her for saving him, and Mindy responds that she only did what her dad would have done. At the hideout, whilst Dave cleans up, Katie realizes her father would have wanted her to stay and fight, so she loads and prepares all her weapons. Dave walks in on Mindy mid-preparation and tries to talk her out of it, but Mindy explains that if she gives up now, her parents' death would mean nothing. At Frank's office, Mindy pretends to be a lost schoolgirl, and after getting the guards' attention, she puts a bullet through all of them and signals to Dave, who is still in the hideout contemplating his next step. Dave finally grows some balls, grabs a weapon, and decides to help Mindy, who is currently dealing with another set of guards. When Frank and his associate hear gunshots downstairs, they immediately take hiding positions and order all their men to eliminate the threat. Downstairs, Mindy recognizes she's being outnumbered, so she hides behind a wall. After calculating her moves, she pounces on them and strategically takes them all out. And right before she shoots the last man, Mindy runs out of bullets and dips to hide when she sees that other men are approaching. Confused by the sudden silence, Frank orders one of his men to go out to check it. Downstairs, the men send one of them to attack, but after the fool shoots randomly, Mindy lands a few knives in his chest, whilst the rest of the men rain bullets on Mindy's hiding spot. One of them goes upstairs to grab a bazooka in Frank's office, but before he can shoot it, Dave shows up at the window and blasts them to oblivion. In the office, while Frank and Chris are jubilating over their win, Mindy and Dave show up to piss on their parade. Frank orders Chris to fight Kick-Ass while he faces Mindy, so while Kick-Ass is kicking Red Mist's ass downstairs, Mindy recovers from Frank's blow and shows him how ferocious an angry 9-year-old can be. Unfortunately for Mindy, about the same time Frank slams her to the ground, Kick-Ass and Chris knock each other out, and just when Frank picks up a gun to finish her off, Kick-Ass shows up with a bazooka and blasts him away. While Dave checks on Mindy, Chris wakes up and grabs a sword to finish them off, but when he gets to the office, he sees Kick-Ass jetpacking Mindy out of the building. Dave drops her off at their usual rooftop and reveals his true identity. Mindy chuckles that she knows already before returning the gesture. Later on, Mindy is put under Marcos's care. She gets enrolled in Dave's school, where she literally beats up school bullies on the first day. And Dave, on the other hand, quits being Kick-Ass to become Katie's boyfriend full-time. However, Chris decides to take over his dad's business and remain a supervillain. Thank you for sticking to the end of my video. Please do me the biggest favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.